if you want to learn other music, you want to know Brazilian music. That's a big word. First of all, there's about 20 different kinds of Brazilian music. You gotta become that. You can pick up a scale, you can play a 9/7 the way they do, you can do these things. But if you're really serious, especially drummers, you have to go to the source. That means get an airplane ticket around the world, spend the next 6 months chasing the drums. I mean, you gotta go to the source, you know? I mean, I can imagine, I always tell this story about Beethoven. Beethoven lived in Bonn, right? And everybody knew that where he lived. And some guy wanted to study composition with him. Half crazy, but he was famous. So this guy goes to Bonn and he finds the village or the apartment, this is 1810, 1812, who knows what it was. He goes into, and he watches Beethoven come out of the house at the same time every day and go to this bar, cafe. So the guy comes, he goes to the bar, the bartender, and he says, every day this guy comes in, is that Ludwig van Beethoven? He said, oh yes. He says he sits in the same place, he doesn't talk to anybody, he eats, has a drink, and he leaves by 7 or 8 o'clock. So this young guy is not going to give up. He's going to get Beethoven. So he's there 5 days, 10 days, you know, Beethoven's checking him out. Mr. Beethoven, sir, maestro, you know, maestro. He says, I'm studying composition, but I need you. You're the only one who can take care of me the right way. And Beethoven says, get lost. Get out of my sight. The first day. And then the second day. And then finally, this is exactly how it was with jazz musicians when I was growing up in the clubs. They see your face after a while, and they go, what do you play? I compose. Oh yeah? Who'd you study with? What are you doing here? He said, I want to study with you. I told you last week the same thing. He said, well, I wasn't in a good mood then. The point is, if you're going to try to learn something that is foreign to your culture, you have to live in the other culture for at least a minute. You have to. So what I learned from Indian music was, I'm not an Indian musician. That's what I learned. And if I used a little scale because I saw a raga, at the beginning I said, it's okay, I'll use it. My first record I did Indian kind of sound, no problem. But then I felt a little guilty. How I had lessons with Charles Lloyd. You all know who Charles Lloyd is. He's also still active, 80 years old, 79, 80. My very good friend, drummer named Bob Moses, some of you might know him. He knew everything. He knew all the, he was brought up in jazz by his parents in New York, way ahead of me. So one day I said, Bob, I said, who plays the most like Coltrane? Now, Coltrane was still alive, but I'm not about to ask him for lessons. That much nerve I didn't have. He says Charles Lloyd plays he plays in a certain style, we say old train, like with Miles. Charles Lloyd is playing with the Cannonball Adderley Sextet. I'm 20 years old, 19, 20. I go, and yes, he sounds like old train. So they play one set, he's sitting at the bar, I'm like back here. I go over to him, I said, Mr. Lloyd, just like this guy went up Beethoven. Mr. Lloyd, do you teach? And he looked at me and goes, no. But the no was a kind of like, don't even think about anything. Because you know, you can say no and go, no. Oh, it's open. You go, no. And go, no. And then he took his glasses, he had glasses, and he put them down like this, and then he looked at me with his eyes, and he said, but you can come over tomorrow. And he said, do you know where I live? I said, I do. He lives right where the Blue Note is now, across the street, in the village in New York. And I started a year-long relationship. Every Sunday I spent with him, his family. I drove Keith Jarrett to a gig, and I did whatever I had to do to help him. I was just helping. But my point is that you got to go to the source as much as you can if you're going to try to do it. It doesn't mean you can't be influenced by it. It just means that you got to be honest about it. Did you really commit to learn that raga in 5, or are you just doing it on the surface? It took me a while to get humble by the enormity of trying to say I'm going to play Indian music. You can't, like Brazil. What do you mean Brazilian? What Brazilian music?